on the joint venture in the destruction of state and society in the Horn of Africa. Over the past few years, it has become impossible to ignore a troubling reality. The Horn of Africa has increasingly lost ownership over its own political destiny and has become largely subordinate to political rivalries originating in the Middle East, decisions concerning war and peace, economic direction, and even social cohesion are no longer primarily shaped within our societies. Increasingly, they are conceived elsewhere, formulated in Middle Eastern capitals and then transplanted into our region. The tensions between Mogadishu and Hargeisa, Addis Ababa, Mekelle, Asmara, or Port Sudan and Darfur cannot be understood solely through local rivalries. They are also contemporary expressions of external ambitions that have found fertile ground in our internal fractures. This pattern is unmistakable. On the eve of consequential national decisions, senior officials, presidents, ministers, generals, quietly depart for foreign capitals. Only after these visits do domestic institutions convene, not to deliberate, but to endorse outcomes already determined. Parliaments, cabinets, and regional councils increasingly serve as ceremonial bodies, providing legal cover for decisions made elsewhere. Sovereignty, once defended with blood and sacrifice, is reduced to performance. External influence in the Horn is not new. What distinguishes the present moment is the emergence of a class of political entrepreneurs who function not merely as weak leaders under pressure, but as active collaborators in external projects. In this sense, they are no different from the chieftains of the 19th century who facilitated the ivory and slave trades through Zanzibar. The method is strikingly similar: private deals, personal enrichment, and the systematic weakening of indigenous authority structures in exchange for external favor and protection. Then, as now, intermediaries prosper briefly while societies are hollowed out. Today, foreign powers no longer need to conquer territory directly. They outsource domination to local actors willing to trade, national interest for personal survival or wealth. Negotiations bypass institutions and are conducted with individuals, behind closed doors, often unwritten and unaccountable. Political leaders cease to be custodians of the state and become brokers of access, managing violence, territory, and allegiance on behalf of external patrons. Even historically resilient states, such as Ethiopia, are increasingly treated not as sovereign actors but as dependent clients of wealthy microstates. Public discourse in the Horn remains saturated with accusations of violated sovereignty. Yet sovereignty is not a slogan. It is the capacity to make autonomous decisions and to be accountable to one's own people. If the most consequential choices are made elsewhere, what sovereignty remains? Who is mortgaging the future of entire societies for short-term gain? At the heart of this arrangement lies a dangerous assumption that the fate of the next generation can be sacrificed without consequence. The kleptocratic nexus linking external powers and domestic collaborators appears to believe that the aspirations, anger, and agency of today's youth can be indefinitely suppressed or managed. This is a fatal miscalculation. A generation raised amid war, dispossession, and humiliation does not forget, nor does it remain passive. The political and social debts accumulated today will be collected, and the price will be far higher than those who profit from the present disorder anticipate. This brings us to an unavoidable warning to Middle Eastern powers. The strategy of governing the Horn through proxies, militias, and personalized alliances may appear efficient in the short term, but it is profoundly unstable. States can be weakened, institutions hollowed out, and leaders bought. But societies cannot be permanently subdued. The resentment being cultivated today will not remain contained within the Horn. It will spill across borders, disrupt trade routes, endanger investments, and generate insecurities that no amount of wealth or militarization can indefinitely insulate against. History offers no examples in which regions, deliberately destabilized for advantage, remained safely. external to the consequences. To acknowledge external manipulation is not to deny internal responsibility. Middle Eastern powers did not invent our divisions, they exploit them. Our failure to resolve political disputes through inclusive politics has repeatedly opened the door to militarization and foreign intervention. Armed confrontation becomes a substitute for dialogue, and external patrons present themselves as indispensable arbiters. Yet by privileging individuals over institutions, and by flooding fragile environments with weapons and illicit capital, these powers actively accelerate state erosion and social fragmentation. What emerges is a destructive convergence between local collaborators and external adventurers, driven by expediency rather than vision, extraction rather than development. Together, they normalize impunity, commodify sovereignty, and fracture societies along lines that may take generations to repair. If this trajectory continues, the collapse of states in the Horn will not be an aberration, but the prevailing condition. Preventing further disintegration requires more than condemnation or nostalgia. It demands a moral reckoning as much as a political one. Reclaiming agency will require restoring politics as a public responsibility, rebuilding institutions that serve citizens rather than patrons, and confronting both external manipulation and internal complicity with honesty and courage. The struggle unfolding in the Horn of Africa is not only about power. It is about whether an entire generation will inherit functioning states or only the wreckage left behind by short-sighted ambition.